Ash whispered down from the torn-open vaults of the throne room, drifting lazily in the dim light like the last snow of a dying world. Jon Snow tasted it with every breath. Bitter, char, the ghosts of 100,000 fires. His boots left faint tracks through the gray as he walked toward Daenerys Targaryen, each step echoing off broken pillars and shattered stone. She stood before the molten ruin of the Iron Throne, a dark silhouette crowned in ash. Her silver hair clung to her temples with sweat, her eyes bright and distant, as if she were still watching the city burn below them. The twisted metal behind her, once swords, once a symbol of power, had slumped and pooled like black ice, a throne reduced to slag by dragon flame. "You did it," Jon said, the words scraping out of his dry throat. "It's over." Over? Daenerys turned, and for a heartbeat he saw the girl from the grass sea, from the narrow bed in Meereen, from the ship's deck on the narrow sea with wind in her hair. Then the vision vanished, and the woman before him smiled with a strange, fierce serenity. "No, Jon, it has only begun. Now they are free. All of them. The wheel is broken." Longclaw felt impossibly heavy in his hand. Tyrion's voice clung to him like the ash in his lungs. "She will never stop. Not until she has broken everything that stands against her." Arya's hard whisper joined it. "I know a killer when I see one." He saw the streets again in his mind, saw the mothers clutching their burned children, the men charred black in mid-flight, the bell towers crashing down. Smoke had blotted out the sky. Screams had twisted into one long, rising note. He had come here to kill her. Daenerys stepped closer, her eyes searching his, and he forced himself not to look away. "Do you remember what I told you in the north?" she asked softly. "That we could make a new world, you and I, a world better than the one that killed Ned Stark, that broke your sister, that murdered children in the dark because of their name." He swallowed. "I remember." "Then see it," she urged, her voice low, coaxing. "See what we can build. They will hate us at first. They will curse my name. But their grandchildren won't remember the ash, only that they grew up in a world without chains. That is the price of freedom. The price of freedom is your father's city, burned," he thought. "The price is children turned to ash." His fingers tightened around Longclaw's hilt until his knuckles ached. She took another step, close enough now that he could see the soot smeared along her cheek, the flecks of blood on her armor, the tremor at the corner of her mouth that did not match her calm words. "Jon," she said softer, "tell me you are with me. Tell me we will build it together." He heard the scrape of metal from beyond the shattered doors, distant voices in the ruined hallways. The unsullied, probably, gray worm, coming to kneel, to praise, to harden her resolve further. She carried the weight of prophecy on her shoulders, of loss, of betrayal. Missandei, gone. Yora, gone. Regal, Viserion, everyone she had loved and lost. He saw all of that in her eyes, layered over the flicker of something else. Fear, perhaps, that he would turn away from her too. He could kill her. One step, a thrust, a gasp, and it would be done. He had imagined it 100 times between the moment Tyrion begged him and the moment he pushed open the doors to the throne room. They said kings had been born and crowned here. What was one more death on the stones? But she was also the woman who had walked out of Drogo's pyre with dragons in her arms. The woman who had chained her children rather than risk innocent blood. Once. The woman who had looked at him beyond the wall and seen not a bastard, not a tool, but a man she loved. His breath shook, his vision blurred. Longclaw's pommel dug into his palm. "I came here to stop you," he said. The words tasted like swallowing glass. Daenerys went very still. "To stop me?" she repeated, a thread of ice in her tone. "Like Cersei? Like the slavers? Like all the men who thought they could decide who would live in chains and who would live free?" His eyes burned. "I came here to kill you." Silence fell like the ash. Her pupils flared, dark, swallowing violet, and for an instant rage flashed across her face, hot and bright. Then something else, deeper, cut through it, hurt, betrayal as raw as an open wound. Her jaw clenched. Her hand twitched toward the dagger at her belt, then froze. "And why?" she asked quietly. "Have you not?" Jon stared at her, at the girl from the North Stories who had become a queen of fire and ruins, at the woman who had flown into his life like a comet. He stared until the small, terrified voice inside him, the one that still believed he was only a bastard, only a mistake, fell silent. His hand loosened. Longclaw slipped from his fingers and clattered to the floor in a burst of ash. The sound of steel on stone rang sharp in the vast, ruined hall. It echoed longer than it should have, as if the very walls were startled. Jon's chest heaved. There was a strange, sudden lightness in his palm where the sword had been, a rising rush of dread to take its place. He did not look down at Longclaw. He kept his eyes on Daenerys instead. "I couldn't," he said hoarsely. "I can't. I won't be another man to put a knife in the back of the person I love and call it justice." Daenerys stared at him, lips parted. Her gaze flicked to the sword, to his empty hands, then back to his face. Wariness and something like wonder wrestled in her eyes. "You would have killed me?" she murmured, as if testing the taste of the words. "You believed Tyrion. You believed they would be better off with me dead." "I believed it might be the only way to save them," Jon said. "But when I looked at you," his voice cracked. "When I looked at you, I saw the girl who walked through fire for people she'd never met. I saw the woman who crossed the world to help us against the dead. I saw someone who has lost everything and everyone, again and again, and still kept walking." Her chin lifted a fraction. "And yet you came with a sword." He admitted. "Because King's Landing is ash, and I don't know how to forgive that. Maybe I never will. But I know this. If I kill you, there's no one left to stop the men who will come after you. Men like Cersei, like your father. Men who will use what you did to justify their own cruelty." He stepped closer, slow, hands open and empty between them. "If you stay here, they'll kill you. They'll raise some lordling in your place and call it peace. And the wheel will keep turning. But if you come with me now, we may still have a chance to do something different." Her brows drew together. "Come with you, where?" He heard the approaching cadence of disciplined feet, unsullied, marching in the outer corridors. Voices barked orders. Somewhere beyond the broken doors, a dragon roared, a sound raw with grief. "Anywhere that isn't here," Jon said. "Dragonstone, Essos, north of the wall if we must. Somewhere we can think, where you aren't surrounded by men who only know how to obey or bow. Somewhere no one expects you to be a god." Her eyes flashed. "I am not a god, Jon." "No," he said. "You're just a person, and you're allowed to choose something other than fire." The words hung between them, fragile as spun glass. Daenerys looked past him, to the shattered archway that once framed the throne room doors. Through the broken stone, she could see a sliver of the sky, thick with smoke. Her jaw worked, her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "You would turn your back on your family," she said slowly. "On your throne." "It was never my throne," Jon said. "And if it means burning cities to hold it, I don't want it. Sansa will keep the North safe. Bran." He almost smiled, a twisted thing. "Bran sees more than all of us. They'll manage. I'm not the only Stark left. And what of me?" There was a tremor in her voice now, cracks in the ice. "What am I if not their queen?" He forced himself closer, close enough to see the soot in the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the blister at her lip from too much sun and wind. Close enough to smell smoke and sweat and dragon on her. "You're Daenerys Stormborn," Jon said. "You're the last Targaryen who remembers what it felt like to chain your dragons because you were afraid of hurting children. You don't have to be the woman who burned the city forever." Her breathing hitched. A faint, incredulous laugh escaped her. "You think I can simply decide to be someone else? I think you've done it before," he said. "You were a frightened girl in Pentos, a Khaleesi in the Dothraki Sea, a liberator in Slaver's Bay. You've been more people in one lifetime than most men manage in 10. Be this person now." The one who chooses not to kill when everyone expects her to. The footsteps were closer now, crisp and rhythmic, echoing down the ruined hallway. Daenerys's gaze darted toward the noise. He could see the calculation in her Grey Worm's loyalty, the Unsullied's devotion, the fear of appearing weak. "If I run," she said, "they will call me coward. They will say I abandoned the people I came to free. If you stay," Jon answered, "they will tear you to pieces or use your name to tear each other apart. You know this. You've seen what happens when a city falls without a plan for what comes after." Her features twisted. For an instant it was as if all the terrible years, the red doors of Bravos, Viserys' hand at her throat, Karth and its perfumed liars, Meereen and its crucified children, pressed down on her at once. She closed her eyes. "What if I follow you?" she whispered. "And you tire of me? What if you decide one day that I am still a monster, and then there will be no one left to stop you from killing me? Then you can burn me," Jon said without hesitation. "If ever I ask you to burn children, if ever I ask you to build a throne on bones, you can burn me where I stand. Swear it." Her eyes opened slowly, wide and searching. "You would make such an oath?" "I've seen enough monsters to know I don't want to be one," he said quietly. "I can't promise I'll never make mistakes, but I can promise I'll stand between you and the worst of what you could become, if you let me." The first shadows of unsullied helmets appeared at the far end of the hall. Daenerys looked from them to the melted throne, then to Jon and the empty space where his sword had fallen. "Dragonstone," she said, more to herself than to him. The word tasted of storms and salt and black stone, of her ancestors, of beginnings. "Very well, Jon Snow. Let us see if we can build a world without thrones." She stepped forward and took his hand. "Come," she said, "before they make martyrs of us both." The corridors of the Red Keep were a maze of dust and ruin. Jon and Daenerys ran side by side, fingers locked so tightly his knuckles throbbed. The air was thick with plaster and ash, every breath a rasp. Somewhere beyond the walls, the city screamed and crackled and fell. They passed the fallen bodies of Lannister guards, of servants crushed under collapsed beams, of men in strange foreign armor. Blood streaked the stones, dried in some places, wet and tacky in others. The world smelled of iron and smoke and endings. At a shattered archway that once opened onto a balcony, Jon paused, dragging Daenerys to a halt. Below them, King's Landing sprawled in ruin. Streets Jon had walked as a boy, nameless and faceless among the crowds, were now jagged scars filled with rubble. Columns of smoke rose from every quarter, smudging the horizon. Fires still burned where roofs had collapsed. Blackened shapes lay in piles where people once haggled and laughed. Daenerys followed his gaze. Her fingers tightened on his. "They were not innocent," she said, but the words lacked the ringing conviction they had held before. "They cheered for Robert, for Joffrey. They let children starve while they played at power." "They were people," Jon said. "Some cheered, some didn't. All of them burned the same." She flinched as if struck, then turned away. "Come," she said again, her voice rough. They descended through a half-collapsed stairwell, stones shifting treacherously underfoot. Twice Jon had to steady her when the floor crumbled, but she moved with the stubborn determination of someone who refused to be buried in the house that had stolen her birthright. When they emerged into the open air, the heat hit him like a physical blow. The courtyard below the Red Keep was a scarred wasteland of blackened flagstones and charred corpses. The gates had been blasted off their hinges. Scorched banners clung to poles, their sigils unrecognizable. Drogon crouched amid the rubble, a mountain of muscle and scale. His sides heaved with each breath. Fresh scorch marks marred his hide where scorpion bolts had grazed him. His eyes, molten gold, narrowed as they approached. "Drogon," Daenerys called, her voice cutting through the roar of distant flames. There was a note in it Jon had never heard before, a quaver, an edge of exhaustion. "My love, we must fly." The dragon's wings shifted, sending a gale of hot wind across the ruined stones. He lowered his head, nostrils flaring as he scented Jon. For a moment, Jon felt again that primal terror from the pit of his stomach, the knowledge that this creature had the strength to tear him in half as easily as a hound shook a rabbit. Drogon's lip curled, revealing teeth as long as Jon's forearm. Smoke trailed from his nostrils. Jon forced himself not to step back. "You know me," he said quietly. "You've carried me before. I'm not here to hurt her." Drogon's golden eyes slid to Daenerys. She placed a hand on his snout, fingers blackened with soot. "He had a sword," she murmured in Valyrian, the syllables rough with smoke. "He meant to kill me. He chose not to. Now he is ours again if we want him." Drogon's breath gusted over Jon, hot enough to make sweat bead on his brow. The dragon's gaze lingered on him, weighing, measuring. Then, with a rumble that vibrated in Jon's bones, Drogon dipped his head, lowering his massive shoulders. "See," Daenerys said, a fleeting curve to her mouth that was not quite a smile. "He remembers that you are a rider, whatever else you are." They climbed into the familiar saddle of muscle between his shoulder blades. Daenerys settled in first, her hand gripping one of the thick leather straps. Jon swung up behind her, arms wrapping instinctively around her waist. He felt the subtle stiffness there, the tension that spoke of hurt and suspicion, but she did not pull away. "Hold fast," she said. With a thunderous slam of wings, Drogon launched himself skyward. The ruined courtyard fell away beneath them. The Red Keep's jagged silhouette shrank. The roiling sea of flame and smoke spread out in every direction. From above, the destruction was even worse. Streets were carved into blackened channels, buildings hollowed shells. In some places, clusters of survivors clung together in courtyards or narrow alleys, staring up with wide, pale faces as the dragon passed overhead. Jon watched a group of children huddled against a wall, their hair white with ash. One little girl lifted a hand, not in greeting but to shield her eyes from the glare. For a heartbeat, he thought he recognized her. Some half-remembered face from the march through the city, but he knew that was only his conscience searching for particular ghosts. Daenerys stiffened in his arms. Her breath hitched as they swept over the smoking ruin of the Great September, the broken tower of the Red Keep, the Blackwater's churning, sooty waters. This was her victory, her proof to the world that she was not her father, that she could not be pushed aside. It looked like the end of the world. Below, on a smashed stairway leading up from a side street, a small figure stood alone, hood blown back by the wind of their passing. Arya Stark's face turned up toward them, pale and set like carved bone. Her gray eyes were two chips of winter in the heat, unblinking as she watched the dragon bear her brother and the queen away. Jon felt the weight of that gaze like a knife between his shoulders. The city fell away behind them, swallowed by smoke. Ahead, the sea opened, vast and cold and gray-blue under a sky choked by ash. Drogon beat his wings harder, leaving the burning behind. By the time Dragonstone rose from the horizon, Jon's muscles burned from clinging to the dragon's back. The air cooled as they left the burning city behind. The smoke thinned, giving way to low, bruised clouds and the clean, harsh scent of the narrow sea. Salt spray dampened his hair, stung the cuts on his face. Dragonstone loomed ahead like a memory of another age. Black stone towers clawing at the sky, carved in the shapes of dragons that had watched the tides for centuries. Lightning flickered beyond the clouds, briefly painting the castle in stark white, then plunging it back into gloom. Drogon circled once, twice, a dark shape against the dimming sky. Jon saw no banners on the walls, no armies waiting. Only a handful of torches burned, scattered and lonely. The island felt abandoned, a forgotten outpost at the edge of the world. "Home," Daenerys whispered, the word torn away by the wind. It was not the home she had dreamt of. No crowds cheered her arrival. No proud lords knelt. Only the sea roared and the fortress watched in silence. Drogon descended toward the main courtyard, wings beating gusts of wind that sent debris skittering across the stone. He landed with a bone-deep thud, claws scraping sparks. Jon slid down first, legs unsteady, then turned to help Daenerys dismount. She took his hand without looking at him, eyes fixed on the towering stone dragons that crowned the battlements. The courtyard was empty. A few rain-softened footprints marked the mud near the stables, but no stable boys emerged, no servants with bows or hurried curtsies. The garrison Stannis Baratheon once kept had dwindled during the wars. When Daenerys left for the north, she had taken most of what remained. "We are alone," Jon said. "Not alone," Daenerys answered, glancing back at Drogon. The dragon had already begun to prowl toward the edge of the courtyard, sniffing the air, his tail lashing. "We have him, and whatever the castle still remembers." She started toward the main keep, her steps firm despite the exhaustion etched into every line of her. Jon hesitated for a heartbeat, then followed. The heavy doors stood slightly ajar, the iron hinges crusted with salt. When he pushed them open, the smell of old smoke and stone and dust greeted him, layered over faint traces of oil and leather. Their footsteps echoed in the great hall. Long tables stood pushed against the walls, benches stacked. A few guttering candles cast feeble light, probably left by whoever still haunted these halls. Caretakers, perhaps, too old or too few to flee when war swept past. Daenerys walked to the center of the hall and turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. Once, she had planned to rule Westeros from here, to sail down the Blackwater on a fleet of dragons and allies. Once she had sat at the long table in the war room above, listening to Tyrion and Olenna and Varys sing of alliances and sieges. "How many times must I come home to find it empty?" she murmured. Jon did not know if she spoke to him or to the memory of her brother, or to the long-dead kings who had built this place. He stepped closer anyway. "We can make it less empty," he said. "You still have followers, unsullied in King's Landing, Dothraki, men who crossed the narrow sea for you." Her mouth twisted. "Men who cheered when the city burned." "You told them to," Jon said quietly. "If anyone bears that burden, it's you." Her shoulders stiffened. "Do you think I do not know that?" Silence lay heavy between them for a moment, thicker than the shadows. He blew out a breath. "There will be survivors," he said. "Refugees, sailors, traders. Not all of Westeros will stay away from Dragonstone forever. The world doesn't end with King's Landing, Daenerys." Her gaze flicked to him at the use of her name, searching his face for mockery, for accusation. He knew what she would find instead. Weariness, yes, and anger still simmering beneath the surface, but also something stubborn and oddly simple. "We will need food," he went on. "Fuel, fresh water. There are cisterns, I remember, stores from Stannis' days, if they haven't spoiled. We can start by seeing what we have." "You speak as if we are preparing for a long siege," she said. "In a way we are," Jon replied, "against the rest of the world." For a heartbeat, something like dark amusement flashed in her eyes. "You have a grim way of offering comfort, Jon Snow." "I've never been much good at comfort," he admitted. "Only at surviving what comes next." He left her standing beneath the vaulted ceiling and moved through the hall, checking side doors, testing shutters. Dust puffed up under his boots. In the kitchens he found cold hearths and empty barrels, but also sacks of grain stacked against one wall, salted fish hanging from hooks. The sea crashed beyond the narrow windows like a heartbeat. When he returned, Daenerys stood before the cold fireplace, one hand braced on the stone. "There is enough to last us a little while," he said. "Not long, not with a dragon to feed. We'll need to fish, hunt, send scouts to the mainland when it's safe." Her fingers traced the carved edge of the mantelpiece. "I did not cross the world to become a landed lady, worrying about fish and grain." "No," Jon said. "You crossed it to make the world better. Maybe this is where that starts, not ends." She looked back at him, eyes tired and old and strangely young all at once. "Very well, Jon Snow," she said. "We will see if your way can build anything in the shadow of what mine destroyed." Later, after they had found a pair of half-terrified old servants hiding in the lower corridors and reassured them with awkward words, after they had lit more candles and sent one of the castle's 2 remaining boats out with a fisherman to lay lines in the dark sea, Jon found himself alone in the war room. The painted table dominated the chamber, its surface worn by years and hands. He remembered standing here not so long ago, listening as Tyrion spoke of siege lines and supplies, as Daenerys' fingers wandered over the carved neck of the peninsula that was King's Landing. Back then, the city had been a prize to win, a symbol to capture. Now it was just a grave. He braced both hands on the table and stared down at the familiar shapes. The north, stretching cold and wild. The wall now broken. The riverlands, scarred and stubborn. King's Landing, a dot on the southeastern coast, ringed by the Blackwater like a dark bruise. "What are you doing?" Some bitter part of him whispered. "You had one chance to stop her. You failed. You chose her. Again." He could almost hear Sansa's voice, low and tight with anger. "You knew what she was, and you went with her anyway. You left us to pick up the pieces." Arya's quieter judgment would be worse. No rage, just a single wordless look. His hand drifted to the carved dragon perched at the edge of the map, its stone wings outstretched over the narrow sea. He moved it idly, tracing a path from King's Landing to Dragonstone, as if he could rewrite what had already been done. A soft rustle made him look up. Daenerys stood in the doorway, framed by stone and shadow. She had changed out of her ash-stained leather, trading it for a simple dark dress she must have found in one of the old chests. It made her look younger, more fragile, and somehow more dangerous, as if the armor had always been a kind of truth-telling. "You did not come to bed," she said. He swallowed, suddenly keenly aware that in leaving the others to their duties, he had also left her alone. "I needed to think about how to run away from the consequences of what we have done," she asked, a sharp edge to her tone. "Yes," Jon said bluntly, "and about how not to spend the rest of my life running." She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. The air shifted, warmer, tensely close. She crossed to the opposite side of the table and looked down at the map. "Tyrion once told me that this table had seen more lies than truths," she said quietly. "Kings and queens standing over it, moving little pieces of wood, pretending the world would bend because they wanted it to." "And you?" Jon asked. "Do you think it bent?" She considered that for a moment, eyes roaming over the carved coastlines, the tiny mountains. "I think it broke," she said at last. "Whether it was mine to break is another question." Her fingers hovered above King's Landing. She did not touch the little crown-shaped marker that had once stood there. Someone had removed it, or maybe it had been knocked away in the chaos. "When I was a girl in Bravos, I used to dream of this place," she murmured. "Of the red keep, of the throne, of a father I had never met. Viserys filled my head with stories. He said the people would pour into the streets when I returned, that they would drown me in roses for freeing them from the usurper's line." "Viserys was a cruel fool," Jon said. "You were never meant to be his reflection. And yet," she said, "here we are, a city burned on my word, innocents dead. Tell me, Jon Snow, am I my father's daughter after all?" He met her gaze across the table. The candles turned her eyes into twin embers, flickering and uncertain. "No," he said slowly, "your father would never have asked that question." Something in her shoulders eased the barest fraction. "I took your choice from you," he went on, "or tried to. I let Tyrion and Varys and everyone else fill my head with what you were, could be, would be. None of them saw you when you freed the slaves at Meereen, or when you chained your dragons because you were afraid. None of them marched with you to the wall. They only saw the fire. And you did not?" she asked. "I saw it too," he said. "But I also saw you on that field outside Winterfell, willing to lose everything to stop the dead. I saw you grieve for Yora, for Missandei. I saw you take the world's hatred and put it on your shoulders like a cloak. You're not your father, Daenerys. You're you." Her brows drew together. "And what am I?" "A woman who has done terrible things," he said, because anything less would be an insult, and a woman who has done great ones. The question is which you want to be from now on." She stared at him for a long, taut moment. Then she looked away, eyes returning to the map. "My enemies will not care that I regret anything," she said. "If I admit weakness, they will come for us twice as hard." "Then we don't admit weakness," Jon said. "Not to them, only to each other." Her head lifted at that sharply, as if he had offered her something both frightening and precious. "Can you do that?" she asked. "Can you stand beside me, knowing what I have done, what I might yet do?" "I can stand beside you," Jon replied. "If you promise we'll never burn a city full of children again. If you swear that whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Not with dragons first, but with sense." His heart hammered as he said it, half expecting her to recoil, to lash out at any hint of constraint. Instead, Daenerys exhaled slowly. When she spoke, her voice was rougher than a dragon's tongue. "I swear," she said, "no more cities, no more bells. If I must fight, it will be armies against armies, tyrants against dragons, not children against fire." "Then I'll stand with you," Jon said. For the first time since the throne room, some small part of him unclenched. Sleep came for Daenerys in fits and starts, a restless tide that never truly claimed her. When she closed her eyes, the bells of King's Landing started ringing again, not as surrender but as accusation. The roar of dragonfire layered over them, a rising, suffocating chorus that filled every crack in her mind. She sat on the edge of the narrow bed, toes curling against the chill of the stone. The room was smaller than the chambers she had taken before, on her first arrival here. This one belonged to some long-dead captain or castellan, its walls bare save for a faded tapestry of a three-headed dragon. She had chosen it deliberately, turning away from the grander suites. She did not feel like a queen tonight. Her hands lay in her lap, palms up. They were clean. She had scrubbed them until the skin reddened, until the old servant had gently tugged the cloth from her grasp and begged her to stop. But in the faint moonlight, she could still see ash smudged on her fingers, blood in the lines of her palms. "They are alive because of you," she told herself. "The freedmen of Meereen, the Dothraki who followed you, the Unsullied who chose your banner when they could have walked away, the Northmen who would have died beneath the Night King's storm. They are dead because of you." Another voice answered, quieter but sharper. "The children in the square, the women in the streets, the men crushed beneath falling stone. Hundreds, thousands, more than you can count." She had always told herself that fire was a tool, a means, that the dragons were not her father's madness reborn, but the sword that would cut through it all. When she mounted Drogon above King's Landing, she had felt righteous, a storm in human form. They had chosen Cersei. They had chosen to look away while small folk starved. But some of those faces, they had not looked like enemies when they burned. She pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes until sparks burst across her vision. There had been no one beside her on Drogon's back then. No one whose voice she trusted enough to listen to. Tyrion's counsel had shattered along with his illusions. Varys had betrayed her. Missandei's absence was a wound she could not stop prodding. Yora's quiet, stubborn presence was gone. Even Jon had drifted away, his warmth turning wary, his words turning cold. And yet he had not killed her. She let her hands fall to her knees and lifted her head, staring at the thin blade of moonlight cutting across the floor. Somewhere on the other side of these walls, she knew, Drogon slept curled on the cliffside, his breath steaming in the cold air. Somewhere above, in the war room, Jon had stood over the map as if he could force his will into the world by staring hard enough. He had come with a sword. He had admitted as much. For the sake of the realm, he had told himself he might have to kill her. That knowledge should have burned worse than any fire. Instead, it left her, stripped, bare. Viserys would have killed anyone who even thought of harming him, would have burned cities to root out a single slight if he had possessed the power. Her father had tried to set King's Landing alight rather than let it fall into enemy hands. But Jon had held a sword over her head and then thrown it away. Why? Because he loved her? Love was a frail thing in her experience. It broke under strain, under hunger and fear and power. It died on spears and in dark alleys and under the trampling hooves of a Khalasar. But he had also promised to stand between her and the worst of what she could become. He had asked her to swear an oath. No more cities, no more bells. If she broke that oath, what would remain of her? A woman who could not even keep a promise made to the last person who dared to believe she could be more than her blood. The thought lodged in her chest like a stone. She rose and crossed to the narrow window, pressing her palms against the cold stone on either side. The sea muttered below, invisible in the dark. She imagined boats out there, tiny and brave, making their way through waves and currents. Some might flee from her, some might seek her. The world had not ended because one city burned. It had simply shifted. Breaker of chains, she whispered into the night, tasting the old title like a foreign language. What good is breaking one set of chains if you forge another from fear? The wind hissed through the arrow slit, ruffling her hair. She turned away from the window and left the room, bare feet silent on the stone. The path down to Drogon's favored ledge was steep and treacherous, carved into the cliffside like a scar. Jon descended with one hand on the rock, the other shielding the flickering lantern from the wind. Far below, the sea hurled itself against the cliffs, white foam ghosting in the darkness. He had not meant to come here. After leaving the war room, he had wandered the corridors of Dragonstone, past sleeping servants and cold hearths, past doorways that whispered of other lives. His feet had carried him eventually to the outer wall, where he caught sight of a familiar dark bulk on the lower ledge. He told himself he only meant to look, to make sure the dragon was real, and not some shared hallucination of grief and exhaustion. But his legs had carried him down the narrow path before his mind quite caught up. Drogon sensed him before he was halfway there. The dragon's head lifted, nostrils flaring. Orange embers smoldered in the depths of his throat. "It's only me," Jon said quietly. "No sword this time." The dragon's lip curled, revealing a glint of teeth. Smoke drifted from his nostrils, touched with the faint scent of char. His muscles shifted under the leathery hide, as if deciding whether this intruder on his ledge was worth the effort of incineration. Jon stopped a safe distance away, or as safe as any distance could be when facing a creature that spat fire. The lantern's light carved deep shadows in the dragon's scales, revealing old scars beneath the newer burns. "You're hurt," Jon murmured, more to himself than to the dragon. "From the scorpions and the battle before that." Drogon blinked slowly. His gaze slid past Jon to a patch of stone where the rock had been worn by repeated weight. Ash dusted the surface. This was where Daenerys had stood, once, with her hand on his snout, whispering in a language of heat and wind. "Do you blame me?" Jon asked softly. "For what happened in the city? For not stopping her? Or for trying to?" It was a foolish question. Dragons did not understand guilt or moral calculus. They knew hunger and flight and the bond with the one who had hatched them. Yet as he stood there, watching Drogon's eyes, he could not help feeling as though the beast weighed him in ways no man ever had. The dragon shifted, scales rasping against stone, and lowered his head slightly. Not quite a bow, not quite an attack. A wary truce. Jon let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Fair enough," he said. "We'll call it even. Do you often talk to beasts in the night, Jon Snow?" He turned. Daenerys stood at the top of the path, her hair loose around her shoulders, the wind tugging at the hem of her dress. The moonlight silvered her face, casting her eyes in shadow. "Only the ones that can kill me," he said. She descended with the sure footing of someone who had grown used to standing near ledges with dragons. Drogon rumbled at her approach, lifting his head higher, the ember glow in his throat softening. She reached out without hesitation and laid a hand against his snout, fingers splaying over a patch of rough, warm scales. "You should be resting," she said without looking at Jon. "So should you," he replied. "Queens don't rest," she said. "We brood." He almost smiled at that, then remembered that brooding, in her case, had often led to war. "I wasn't a queen once," she added after a moment, her hand moving slowly along Drogon's jaw. "I was just a frightened girl in a strange city with a drunk, angry brother and no future." "You burned a witch alive in that strange city," Jon reminded her gently. "You hatched 3 dragons. You've never been just anything." She glanced back at him, lips twisting. "You do not let a woman's illusions stand, do you?" "I've had too many of my own to trust them," he said. For a while they stood in silence, the 3 of them, man, woman, dragon, listening to the sea. The wind tugged at Jon's cloak, bringing with it the faint scent of salt and kelp. Above, the sky was a low, iron gray, the stars hidden. "Do you regret it?" she asked at last, voice barely audible above the waves. "Regret what?" he said. "Not killing you or following you here?" "Both." He thought of the bodies in King's Landing, of the faces that would haunt his sleep. He thought of the Starks in Winterfell, of Bran's distant eyes, Sansa's tight mouth, Arya's unreadable stare. He thought of Longclaw falling from his hand in the throne room, of the feel of her fingers closing around his. "Yes," he said. "And no, that is not an answer," she said. "It's the only one I have." He shifted, searching for the right words. "If I'd killed you, the city would still be ash. The dead would still be dead. They'd just have one more queen's blood on their stones, and the next war ready to start. I don't know if what I chose was right. I only know it was mine." She studied him, eyes reflecting faint lantern glow. "You may find that choosing for yourself is a dangerous habit to acquire, Jon Snow. Men like you are not meant to have that freedom. You're meant to bear other people's burdens." "Maybe I'm tired of that," he said. "Maybe I'd rather carry my own mistakes for once." "And me?" she asked. "Am I one of those mistakes?" He looked at her, really looked, at the lines fatigue had carved into her face, at the softness in her posture that emerged only when she thought no one was watching, at the iron coil of will that still burned, banked but not extinguished. "You can be," he said quietly, "or you can be the thing we did right after everything we've done wrong. It's up to us." Drogon's rumble vibrated through the rock. Daenerys turned her face toward the sea. "Then tomorrow," she said, "we will begin to choose." Far to the north, the world was still cold, and the snow still fell, heedless of southern wars. Winterfell's courtyard hummed with the subdued activity of men mending walls and smiths hammering out new hinges. The scars of war still showed, but life, in its stubborn northern way, had returned. In the great hall, Sansa Stark stood beneath the carved direwolves and read the raven's message twice, then a third time, as if repetition might make the words rearrange themselves into something less terrible. "Say it again," Arya said from the shadows by the pillar. Her voice was flat, but Sansa knew her well enough to hear the tightness beneath. Sansa swallowed against the dryness in her throat and read aloud. "King's Landing has fallen," she began, each syllable tasting of iron. "The city was burned by dragonfire. Queen Cersei is dead. Thousands of small folk dead. The Red Keep shattered. Queen Daenerys now holds the city, held the city, and has vanished on her dragon. Jon Snow..." Her voice caught, and she forced herself to continue. "Jon Snow departed with her. Their whereabouts are unknown." The crackle of the fire filled the silence that followed. Outside, the wind howled along the battlements, rattling the shutters. Bran sat very still in his chair, hands folded in his lap. His eyes seemed to look past the hall's walls, past the stone and snow and ravens, into some far distance only he could see. "What does that mean?" Arya asked. "Departed with her." "It means they left together," Sansa said. "On the dragon, most likely. It means he went with her, rather than stand against her." Arya's jaw tightened. "After what she did?" Sansa's fingers crumpled the edge of the parchment. "Perhaps he didn't have a choice." Arya's stare was level, merciless. "Jon always has a choice when it comes to honor." "That is what I fear," Sansa murmured. She turned to Bran. You saw this, she said. It was not a question. Bran's gaze slid to her, calm and distant. Not as you think, he said. I see many things, many paths. The past is clearer than the future. But I knew that fire would come again, to King's Landing. I knew that Jon would be faced with a decision that would shape more than his own life. And you said nothing? Arya demanded. If I tried to stop every horror, Bran said, I would become the thing I am trying to prevent. People must make their choices, Arya. Jon most of all. Sansa wanted to scream at him, to seize the arms of his chair and shake him until that placid mask cracked. Instead, she drew a slow breath, the way her mother once had when facing a hall full of bickering lords. Can you see him now? She asked. Can you see where he is? Bran's eyes unfocused slightly, pupils widening. The firelight flickered across his face. When he spoke again, his voice was very soft. Stone, he said. Black stone rising out of the sea. Dragons carved in the walls. Storm clouds. Dragonstone, Sansa said. Arya's hand drifted unconsciously toward Needle's hilt. So he ran, she said. With her. He didn't stop her. He didn't kill her. Would you have? Bran asked mildly. Arya didn't answer. Her mouth was a thin line. Sansa refolded the parchment with slow, careful movements. The lords of the realm will not forgive what happened in King's Landing, she said. They will not forget it. If Jon is with her, they will count him among her allies, her accomplices. He protected us, Arya snapped. He brought her north to fight for us, and then he brought her south to burn a city, Sansa said quietly. The world won't remember the first as easily as the second. Bran's chair creaked as he shifted slightly. Jon never wanted the throne, he said. He wanted only to keep people safe. That hasn't changed. Hasn't it? Sansa said. He chose her, Bran. Again. After everything. Bran's gaze drifted toward the window, where snow pressed against the glass. People are not pieces on a board, he said. They're rivers. You cannot look at a river once and know all the places it will flow. Sansa thought of Jon's face the last time she'd seen him, torn between duty and love. She thought of Daenerys' eyes, bright and burning, the way they had fixed on the north as something to be claimed. He's still my brother, she said, more to herself than to them. Half-brother, cousin, king, whatever the ravens and maesters call him. He's still Jon. I won't let them kill him for what she has done. Arya's smile was humorless. You can't stop the whole world from trying. I can try, Sansa replied. And if the world comes for him, it will find the north in its way. The night wore on. Lanterns went out one by one in the few occupied chambers of Dragonstone, until only a scattering of torches along the outer walls remained. The sea's voice deepened, the tide pulling at the island's edges like a restless hand. Jon found Daenerys on the battlements, as he had half expected he would. She stood with her hands resting lightly on the black stone, her gaze fixed on the darkness beyond. The wind carried her hair back from her face, revealing the clean, hard lines of her profile. You'll freeze, he said, coming to stand beside her. I have known worse cold than this, she said. The wind on the Dothraki Sea at night, the dark streets of Karth when we were turned away, the chill of the crypts beneath Winterfell. This is familiar. He leaned his forearms on the parapet, letting the stone take some of his weight. For a few moments they stood in silence, listening to the waves. When I burned the masters at Astapor, she said suddenly, I felt clean, as if I were washing something foul from the world. Their screams sounded like justice to me. Even when I woke in the night and heard them still, I told myself it was the price. Jon said nothing. Her words hung in the air between them, featherlight and heavy as lead all at once. When I flew over King's Landing, she went on, I told myself I was hearing that same thing. Justice. Vengeance for the children burned by the Lannisters. For the woman who died on the walls of King's Landing with your queen's name on her lips. For all the years my family's enemies spent sitting where I should have sat. I told myself that if I spared them, They would only rise up against me later, as they did against my father. That I had to teach them fear. Her hands tightened on the parapet until the knuckles whitened. But afterward, when the fires burned low, they did not sound like justice. They sounded like people. And people sound the same when they scream, no matter whose side they were on. Jon stared out at the dark, at the faint glimmer where the moon broke through clouds. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked quietly. "Because you asked me to swear that I would not do it again," she said. "And because I am trying to decide whether I can keep that promise." He turned his head to look at her. "Can you?" She met his gaze head-on. "If they come for me," she said, "with swords and fire, if they gather fleets and armies and march on this island, can I sit in this cold castle and let them take everything I have left, just because some of them have children who will cry when they die? You can fight their armies," Jon said. "You can burn their ships if they attack you at sea. You can meet them in battle, same as any king or queen. But you don't have to burn their cities before they ever lift a sword. They will not separate themselves so neatly," she said. "Tyrants rarely do." "Then we give them reason to," Jon replied. "If we offer peace, if we send word that will protect the small folk, that will only fight those who come with swords drawn, some will listen. Not all, maybe not even most, but enough." "And you think that will cure them of fear?" she asked. "Fear is the only language most men in power understand." "I don't know," Jon said. "I only know I'm tired of fear being the first word on everyone's tongue." She let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "You are a strange man, Jon Snow. You kill the woman you love to protect the world. You refuse. You take her hand instead. You flee with her to a bleak island in the sea. Then tell her the world can be gentle if she just tries hard enough." "I never said gentle," Jon said. "Only better than ash." She studied him, as if trying to see not just the man before her but whatever lay beneath. Blood, heritage, prophecy, all the tangled threads that had brought them to this stone wall over a dark sea. "You could have taken the throne," she said. "You could have killed me, gone to them with your name and your honor, let them crown you." "Maybe," he said, "but I'd still have had to live with what I'd done. And I'm tired, Daenerys. Tired in a way no throne could fix." She stepped closer, the space between them narrowing. "You are a terrible politician," she said softly. "I've been told worse," he replied. They stood close enough now that he could feel the warmth of her, even in the freezing wind. Her hair whipped against his cheek. He smelled the faint tang of smoke that seemed woven into her skin, no matter how often she washed. "If I fall," she said, "if I break my promise and reach for fire when I should not, will you stop me?" "Yes," he said. "Even if it means." "Yes," he repeated. Her throat moved as she swallowed. Then she nodded, a single, precise movement. "Then we will see," she said, "what sort of world a dragon and a wolf can build when they are not trying to tear each other apart." Dawn came grudgingly, like a guest who did not quite trust the house. The sky lightened from black to deep indigo, then to a bruised gray shot through with faint streaks of rose. The sea turned from ink to steel. Gulls cried, wheeling over the cliffs. Jon had not gone far from the battlements all night. He had paced, dozed fitfully against the cold stone, risen whenever a new thought gnawed at him. When the sun's rim finally crested the horizon, he was back at the parapet, arms folded, watching it with the wary gratitude of someone who had half expected the day not to come. He heard Daenerys' footsteps before he saw her, light but sure. She joined him without a word, cloak wrapped tight around her. "For a moment," she said, "I thought the sun might not rise." "I've seen that happen," Jon said. "Or close enough. The long night felt like it would never end. But it did. This will too." She looked at him sidelong. "You think I am a season, then? A winter that will pass if they just wait long enough?" "I think you're a storm," he said. "Storms can tear ships apart. They can also bring the rain people need to live. It depends where you land." Her lips curved faintly. "Careful. If you keep talking like that, the bards will try to put your words to song, and we'll both suffer." He huffed out a breath that might have been a laugh. The wind off the sea was sharp, but the rising sun lent the air a fragile warmth. Below, in the courtyard, the old servants moved about their tasks with the deliberate efficiency of those who had done the same work for decades. The fisherman's boat had returned in the gray before dawn, its hold heavy with writhing silver. Someone was already gutting the catch near the kitchens. The faint, clean smell of fish mingled with the salt air. "We have food for a few days," Jon said. "After that, we'll need more hands, more boats. We can't feed a dragon and a fortress on one old man's nets." "Who will come?" she asked. "Who would dare?" He shrugged. "Sailors looking for shelter, smugglers, men and women who have nowhere else to go. Word will spread that Dragonstone is not empty, that a dragon still roosts here. People are drawn to power, even when it frightens them. And when they come," she said, "what will they find?" "Depends what we make of this place," Jon replied. "We could turn it into another fortress of fear, or we could make it something else. A refuge, a start." She rested her hands on the parapet, fingers splayed. The light caught the pale scars on her knuckles, reminders of battles fought long before Westeros ever knew her name. "You want to build a sanctuary on the bones of a dynasty," she said. "I want to give people somewhere to go that isn't a grave," he said. "If the lords in the south decide they can't live with you alive, they'll come. If we show them that we're not here to burn their cities, some of them might stay their hands. If we start helping the people they ignore, they may hate us even more," she finished, "for showing them what they are." "Maybe," Jon said, "but at least we'll be doing something better than waiting for the next war." She looked out over the sea, eyes narrowed against the rising light. "When I was a child," she said, "I had no safe place, no sanctuary. We moved from city to city, house to house, always one step ahead of someone who wanted Viserys dead. Me if they thought it would hurt him. The idea of a place where no one is hunting you." She shook her head. "It feels like a story you tell frightened children to help them sleep. Stories have to start somewhere," Jon said. She turned her face fully toward him then, and for the first time since the throne room, the fury in her gaze had receded enough for something else to shine through. Uncertainty. Hope so fragile he was almost afraid to look at it. "You really believe this is possible?" she said. "After everything?" "I don't know if it's possible," he said, "but I know the other path. I've seen where it leads. If there's even a chance of another way, I'd rather fail at that than succeed at more burning." She studied him for a long time, the wind tugging at her hair, the sun climbing higher behind her. Then she nodded slowly. "Very well," she said. "We will make Dragonstone a sanctuary, for the broken, for the hunted, for those the great lords would rather forget. We will send word, not to kings and queens first, but to sailors and freedmen and those who slip between the cracks." "And when the lords come anyway?" Jon asked. "Then we will meet them," she said. "On the sea, on the field, wherever they choose. But we will not be the ones to burn first." It was not absolution. It was not forgiveness. It was a line drawn in shifting sand, a promise made in the thin light of dawn. It would be tested and strained and perhaps broken. But it was a beginning. Below them, Drogon's roar rolled up from his ledge, echoing off the black stone. It sounded less like a threat this time, and more like a declaration. Jon looked at Daenerys, at the Dragon Queen who had burned a city and now spoke of refuges. She looked back at him, at the man who had dropped his sword when the world begged him to use it. "Together?" she asked. "Together," he said. The sun rose higher over the sea, casting Dragonstone in sharp relief. For the first time since the fires of King's Landing, the day did not feel entirely like a judgment. It felt just barely like a chance. By mid-morning the wind had shifted, driving low clouds across the sky and sending sheets of fine rain against Dragonstone's narrow windows. Inside one of the smaller council chambers, Jon Snow hunched over a table with a quill in hand, staring at the blank patch of parchment before him as if it were an enemy line. Around him, scrolls lay scattered, some half-written, others discarded, their seals broken and their contents crossed out in thick black strokes. An inkpot sat at his elbow, its surface a dark mirror that trembled with each gust of wind that shook the walls. Against the far stone, 3 raven cages hung from iron hooks. The birds shifted and muttered, black eyes bright and impatient. "I'm not good with words," Jon said, glaring at the parchment. "Not the kind that need to convince anyone of anything." "You convinced men to follow you beyond the wall," Daenerys said from his side. "You convinced me to fly north into a storm I could not see the end of." "That was different," he said. "Then the White Walkers were marching. There was no time for this." He gestured vaguely at the desk, at the scattered scrolls. "Now we're asking the world to trust us after we've given it every reason not to." She exhaled slowly. "Then perhaps we do not ask for trust. We ask for witnesses." He looked up at her. "Witnesses to what?" he said. "To what we become here," she said. "If we tell them we are building something other than another throne, some will laugh. Some will spit and burn the letters. But a few might believe us enough to come and see. If they find only fear and fire, the world will know. If they find something else..." She let the thought trail off. Her hand on the table was steady, but he could see the tension in the tendons, the faint whiteness around her nails where they pressed into the oak. Jon dipped the quill and set its tip to the parchment. The words came slowly at first, halting and awkward. "To those with no lord to protect them," he wrote. "To those driven from their homes by war, by hunger, by the cruelty of kings. To sailors and sellswords, to craftsmen and widows, to any who have been forgotten by the lords of this land." He swallowed and went on. "Dragonstone stands open as refuge. Food we have we will share. Our walls will shelter those who come in peace. No man or woman will be turned away for their name or where they once bent the knee." He hesitated, glancing at Daenerys. "We can't feed everyone," he said. "Not yet. We can feed more than we are feeding now," she replied. "And if we starve sharing our food, we will at least starve doing something other than hoarding it." He nodded and continued. "No city will burn by our hand. No child will die by our design. We will fight those who come to kill us, but we will not be the first to bring fire." He wrote the last sentence very carefully, aware of the weight in each stroke of ink. "Signed Jon Snow," it read. Then he frowned, struck that out and wrote instead, "Signed, Jon of House Stark and House Targaryen. Sworn shield to Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen." He passed the quill to her. She took it between finger and thumb, a flicker of old reluctance in her eyes. The last time she had signed her name to a proclamation, it had flown out across a world she thought ready to bend. "What am I now?" she murmured. "Queen? Exile? Monster asking forgiveness she does not deserve." "You're Daenerys," he said. "Let that be enough." After a moment, she bent over the parchment and wrote in her neat, flowing hand, "Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, breaker of chains, mother of dragons, sworn protector of the weak." She paused, then added, "and penitent destroyer of King's Landing." Jon's breath caught. "That's the truth," she said. "Let them choke on it, or let them see that I will not pretend my hands are clean." She sanded the ink and blew softly, then rolled the scroll and pressed a seal into the wax. Not the leaping horse of the Dothraki, not the 3-headed dragon of conquest, but a simple signet that bore the old Targaryen crest without embellishment. "3," she said, glancing at the cages. "1 for the north. 1 for the Riverlands and Vale. 1 for the south and Stormlands. We will see who answers." Jon rose, took the scrolls as they were finished, and moved to the ravens. The birds shifted restlessly, claws scraping metal, heads cocking. He tied the first message to a leg, stroking glossy feathers with rough fingers. "Fly fast," he murmured, "and don't get eaten." The raven cawed, as if offended, then shot out into the gray sky when he opened the hatch. The others followed, 3 dark blurs angling away through the rain. "Now we wait," Daenerys said. For what? Jon asked. For the world to decide what to do with us, she said. And for us to decide what to do with ourselves while it does. The first answer came not by raven, but by sea. Late that afternoon, as the rain thinned to a mist and the tide began to crawl back out, one of the old servants came rushing into the hall, breathless and wild-eyed. Boats, he gasped. There's a boat. Might be more behind it. South side, Milady, Dragon's Mouth Inlet. Flying no colors. Daenerys and Jon exchanged a wordless glance. Then they were moving out of the hall, down the worn steps, across the slick courtyard. The wind smelled sharper at the southern edge of the island, tinged with kelp and the faint reek of rotting seaweed. They reached the narrow path down to the landing and saw it. A single, battered fishing craft, its sail patched in 3 places, its hull scored by old barnacles and fresher scars. The boat pitched in the churning water as it fought the currents toward the rocky shelf that served as a makeshift harbor. Figures huddled on the deck, wrapped in cloaks and blankets. Jon counted quickly, 8, 10, 12 perhaps, hard to tell, with children tucked under arms, faces hidden. Refugees, Daenerys said. Her voice was unreadable. From King's Landing or somewhere near. Could be raiders, Jon muttered. Smugglers. Men hoping to get close enough to stick a knife in you. They could have stayed where they were if they wanted to rob corpses, she said. No smuggler sails to Dragonstone by accident. Not anymore. She started down the path before he could answer. He followed, hand on the hilt of the sword he'd taken from the castle armory to replace Longclaw at his side. It felt unfamiliar there. He doubted it would ever feel like an extension of his arm the way the old blade had. The landing stones were slick with spray. Waves hissed up between narrow gaps, retreating with a sound like intake of breath. Drogon's silhouette was a dark smear on the cliff high above, watching with unblinking golden eyes. The fishing boat bumped against the rock with a hollow thunk. A man in a salt-stained cloak caught the rope thrown from the shore by one of the castle's 2 old guards and looped it hastily around an iron ring. He looked to be in his 40s, his beard shot with gray, his hands calloused and cracked. His eyes, when he lifted them to the figures waiting on the stone, were wary and hollow. Dragonstone, he said, as if confirming that the island was not some cruel trick of fog and tired eyes. We saw the ravens, or heard of them, leastways. Word runs faster than birds, these days. Daenerys stepped forward, the hem of her cloak brushing the dark water. You came seeking refuge, she said. He stared at her. His gaze took in her face, her hair, the set of her shoulders. Recognition dawned slowly, the way a wound bled after the first, shocked moment. You, he breathed. A murmur ran through the people behind him. You're her. Jon felt the tension spike like a drawn bowstring. His hand closed more firmly on his sword's hilt. On the deck, a woman drew her children closer, eyes wide. My name is Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, she said. Her voice did not flinch. I burned King's Landing. I am not here to deny it. One of the younger men on the boat, the only one with the bearing of someone who had once worn armor, took a step forward, fury flaring bright in his eyes. My brother died in that fire, he snarled. He was a baker, not a soldier. Never took up arms against anyone. You turned his street into a furnace. Jon shifted subtly, putting his body a little more between Daenerys and the edge of the landing. And yet you came, Daenerys said, knowing who I am. Because the Lannisters are dead and the Queen's gone and King's Landing is a pit of smoke and thieves. The older man answered hoarsely. Because the lords in their castles are too busy arguing over crowns to care about folk like us. Because word came that Dragonstone was offering shelter, and we had nowhere else. Shelter, the younger man spat, from the one who made us need it. That is true, Daenerys said quietly. And if you wish to spit in my face for it, I will not stop you. But when the storms come tonight, they will not care whose fault the fire was. Either you will have a roof over your head or you will not. Decide. The boat rocked as the refugees shifted, murmuring among themselves. The older man shot the younger a sharp, warning look. "We got children," he said. "Old ones, sick ones. We don't ask for much. Just enough to live and not be hunted." "You'll have food and shelter," Jon said. "Work if you want it. Place at our fire. Armed men don't get to keep their weapons inside the walls without our leave. Anyone who raises a hand against another under our roof will answer for it." The younger man's jaw clenched. His gaze snapped to Jon. "And who are you to make those terms?" "Jon Snow," he said. "I fought for the living at Winterfell. I fought beside this woman at the wall, and I fought against what she became in King's Landing. Now I'm here to see that no more cities burn. If that's not enough for you, you can turn your boat around." The man's nostrils flared. For a heartbeat, Jon thought he might draw the short knife at his belt and uselessly throw himself at them. Then he seemed to deflate, shoulders sagging. "My brother's gone either way," he muttered. "Storm took half our village. Fire took the rest. Might as well let the Dragonwoman's castle keep the wind off our heads a while." He turned and gestured to the others. One by one, they began to disembark, shaky-legged on the wet stone. Children clung to their mother's skirts. An old woman with burns seamed along one side of her face leaned heavily on a stick, her eyes shadowed hollows. A boy of perhaps 10 carried a bundle almost as large as himself, jaw set very tight. As they passed, some lowered their eyes. Others stared openly at Daenerys with a mixture of fear and loathing and something more complicated. Curiosity, maybe, or the desperate hope that she might still be what she once promised to be. She bore their gazes without flinching. Jon walked at her side, every sense alert, as they led the first refugees of Dragonstone up toward the fortress that would decide whether their names became part of a new song or just more ash in the wind. The great hall warmed slowly, as if reluctant to remember what a hearth was for. Fires roared in the long stone fireplaces, their heat pressing back damp and chill. The air filled with the smell of fish stew, of fresh bread baked in haste from the castle's dwindling flour stores, of wet wool steaming. Jon moved up and down the line of newly arrived refugees, bowl in hand, ladling stew, pointing them toward benches where blankets had been laid out. The older of the two servants, Mara, she had said her name was, with a curtsy born more of habit than deference, hovered nearby, barking instructions at the handful of others who had once tended Dragonstone when it had served Stannis Baratheon. "Sit there, mind the little ones," she told a woman with twin toddlers clinging to her skirts. "You, lad, take those boots off by the fire or you'll be squelching about all day. No, don't crowd her. She's coughing up half the narrow sea as it is. Give her some air." Daenerys did not sit at the high table. She moved among the people, cloak wrapped close, speaking in a low voice to those who would meet her gaze. Some refused to look at her at all, turning their faces away as if afraid that eye contact itself might call down dragonfire. Others stared, fascinated, as if trying to reconcile the soot-smudged woman before them with the monstrous figure of their nightmares. Near the hearth, the burned old woman with the stick sat hunched on a bench, a bowl of stew untouched in her lap. Her one good eye tracked Daenerys's approach with a dull hatred that had burned so long it had calcified. "I know you," the woman said when Daenerys knelt in front of her. Her voice was a rasp, the skin around her mouth twisted by scar tissue. "I saw you in the sky, you and your beast." Daenerys swallowed. "What is your name?" she asked. "Does it matter?" The woman's fingers tightened on her spoon. "You didn't ask it when you set the world on fire." "No," Daenerys said quietly. "I did not. My grandchildren died." The woman went on. "One moment they were playing in the street, the next, all flame. My son tried to drag them out. He burned alive on top of them. I heard them screaming, even after the bells rang." The hall seemed to narrow around them. Jon, watching from a few paces away with another bowl in his hands, saw the way Daenerys' shoulders stiffened, the slight flinch she couldn't quite hide. "If you would spit in my face," Daenerys said, "I won't stop you. If you would curse me, I won't stop you. If you would take this bowl and throw it at me, I won't stop you." I deserve all of that. But you are here now, and if you want to sleep under my roof, I will do what I can to make sure there is a roof to sleep under." The old woman's eye shone wetly, her hand shook, and a little of the stew slopped over the rim of the bowl onto her skirt. She did not seem to notice. "You cannot bring them back," she whispered. "No," Daenerys said. "I cannot. You cannot make it right." "No," Daenerys repeated. "I cannot. I can only decide what I do from this day forward." The old woman stared at her for a long, trembling moment. Then, abruptly, she lifted the bowl and took a sip of the stew. Daenerys exhaled, as if she had been holding her breath for hours. She rose slowly, nodded once, and turned away. She didn't see the boy. Jon did, though. He saw him moving through the edges of the crowd. A slight figure in a too large cloak, hair hanging in his eyes, shoulders hunched as if against a blow. The boy had been quiet on the boat, hanging back. Jon had thought him frightened, shocked. Now he saw the flat steadiness in the boy's gaze, the way his right hand stayed tucked inside the cloak, tight against his side. The distance between the boy and Daenerys shrank. 10 paces. 8, 6. "Wait," Jon said, his voice barely above the murmur of the hall. "Lad." The boy lunged. His arm flashed out of the cloak, steel gleaming in the firelight. It was just a small knife, the kind used to gut fish or carve bread. But in a 10-year-old's hand, it was still a killing thing if it bit deep in the right place. Daenerys turned at the last instant. Surprise flared across her face, followed by something like resignation. Jon moved. The bowl in his hand clattered to the stone floor, stew splattering his boots. He caught the boy's wrist just shy of Daenerys's ribs. The knife halted with its point a hand's breadth from her. The boy snarled, high and feral, twisting, trying to wrench free. "Let me go," he shouted. "She killed my ma'am. She killed my sisters. Let me." Jon wrenched his arm behind his back, not gently. The knife fell with a clatter. Mara cried out. A ripple of alarm rolled through the hall as people surged to their feet, some backing away, others craning to see. Daenerys stood very still, eyes fixed on the boy's face. His cheeks were streaked with grime and tears, his lower lip chewed bloody. "Don't hurt him," she said. Jon tightened his grip reflexively. "He just tried to put a knife in you." "You heard him," she said. "He has no one left. He has lost more than most criminals who ever stood in a queen's court. What would you have done if you believed your sisters burned because of a stranger in the sky?" He thought of Robb and Bran and Rickon running through Winterfell's courtyards, of Sansa's letters, of the rage that had ignited in him when he believed Ramsay had hurt his family. The answer was simple and ugly. "I would have wanted blood," he said. The boy spat at Daenerys' feet. "I want more than that," he hissed. "I want you to feel what it's like to lose everything." Daenerys' gaze did not waver. "I have," she said softly. "I only thought it gave me the right to make others feel it too. I was wrong." The boy frowned, as if the words did not fit any shape he recognized. "Your name," Jon said, loosening his grip slightly but not letting go. "What is it?" "Mathis," he muttered. "Mathis Cobb. Mathis Cobb." Daenerys repeated. "You came here wanting to kill me. I will not pretend that doesn't matter. But if you still want to, you won't need a knife." She looked at Jon. "Let him go." Jon stared at her. "You can't mean to." "Let him go," she said again, her voice like the edge of a drawn blade. Slowly, Jon released the boy's arm. Mathis stepped away, rubbing his wrist, glaring between them. Daenerys took a step closer. The hall had gone nearly silent now, every breath held. "If you want me dead," she said, "you'll get your chance. There are many who feel as you do. But for now, there is work to be done. If you stay here, you'll help with it. You'll fish, you'll mend nets, you'll carry buckets, you'll stand watch. You'll eat at our fire and sleep under our roof. And every day, you will see me walk these halls and do what I can to make sure no more boys lose their mothers because of me." Mathis glared, chest heaving. "And if I refuse?" Then you can get back on your boat, she said, and take your chances out there. His gaze flicked to the door, to the walls, to the gray water beyond the narrow windows. He swallowed. You're a monster, he whispered. I have been, she said. The question is whether I stay one. You can help answer it if you have the courage. He looked away first. Fine, he muttered, but I'm not calling you my queen. I didn't ask you to, Daenerys said. Jon watched the boy slouch away toward the benches. Shoulders knotted, knife abandoned on the stone. He bent to pick it up, weighing the little blade in his palm. That was a risk, he said. Daenerys let out a breath that shuddered. Every day that I breathe is a risk, she said. If I start putting children in chains because they hate me, I might as well have stayed in King's Landing. The day bled into evening. More boats came, 2 small skiffs from a hamlet along the Blackwater coast, bearing a handful of families who had fled the spreading chaos. A larger trading vessel with a skeleton crew, its captain calculating enough to see opportunity in being first to reach a dragon queen who might need supplies. By nightfall, the great hall was full of low voices and the occasional exhausted sob. Children slept curled on benches, wrapped in whatever blankets could be found. Men and women sat in clusters near the hearths, bowls empty in their hands, staring into the flames as if the fire might rearrange itself into scenes from their former lives. Daenerys did not withdraw to her chamber. She stayed among them, as she had in the early days at Meereen, when she had walked the streets to hear petitions with her own ears. Jon watched her move from group to group, listening more than she spoke. Near midnight, she settled on a low stool beside a man whose arms and neck bore the blistered, shiny traces of burns. One side of his beard refused to grow where the skin had been damaged. His eyes were dark and watchful. You were near the Street of Flower, he said when she asked where he had been when the fire came. My bakehouse was 2 alleys over from the main square. I saw the soldiers throw down their swords, saw the bells start to ring. Daenerys's hands tightened in her lap. I thought that was the end of it, he went on. That the queen that you had accepted surrender. I took my cousin's children down into the cellar. We had flour, barrels of water, a place to hide. My wife started to pray. Then the heat came, like opening an oven door only everywhere. The wood above us started to creak. We heard people screaming in the street. The air went thin. He swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. The scar tissue on his neck caught the firelight. The ceiling collapsed, he said. My wife pushed the children under the table. She told me to go back up, see if I could help anyone. Went. I shouldn't have, maybe, but I could hear an old man calling out in the next house. And I thought. His voice broke. I pulled 3 people out before the roof came down, he whispered. The last one was a boy, not much older than that one who tried to stick you earlier. His hair was on fire. I wrapped him in a blanket, carried him out into the street. The sky was all orange. Your dragon was up there, roaring. I saw your face for a moment when you flew over. You looked like you weren't even seeing us. Daenerys's throat moved as she swallowed. I wasn't, she said hoarsely. Not as I should have. I saw symbols, enemies, not bakers, not children. Then the house went up, the man said. The heat knocked me off my feet. When I woke up, my beard was gone and my arms looked like boiled meat. My wife and the children were... They didn't even find bones. Silence fell around them. Even those not involved in the conversation edged closer, drawn by the rawness of the confession. Jon, leaning against a pillar in the shadows, felt each word land like a stone. I have no right to ask it, Daenerys said. But I will anyway. Why did you come here? The man let out a sharp breath that might have been a humorless laugh. Because the Lannisters are gone, he said, and the gold cloaks are worse than ever. Because the men who wear lions on their chests are either dead or hiding behind new colors, and none of the ones who rode under you stayed to clean up the bodies. Because you sent ravens promising shelter. And because if there's one person in this world who has the power to make sure no one else wakes up in a burning cellar, it's the woman who burned the first city. He met her gaze steadily. If you run away, if you die in some corner of the world where no one can see you, then all this will have been for nothing. Just another mad Targaryen and a pile of ash. But if you stay, if you build something, maybe the next poor bastard who takes a wife won't have to worry about whether a queen will decide his street is worth less than her fear. She bowed her head. The flames painted shifting shadows across her face, turning her eyes into dark hollows. I cannot promise I will be what you need, she said. I can only promise I will try to be better than I was. That's more than most kings ever do, the man said. It'll have to be enough. For now. He lifted his bowl slightly in a half salute, then drained the last of the stew. When at last Daenerys rose from the stool, her movements were stiff. Jon stepped out of the shadows to meet her. Up close, he could see the fine tremor in her fingers. Are you done for the night? He asked. For tonight, she said. Their stories are all the same and all different. Fire and loss and the feeling that no one who lit the flames will ever hear them. At least here, that last part is no longer true. It will cost you, Jon said softly. Everything worth having does, she replied. You taught me that, north of the wall. In King's Landing, dusk fell over a city that no longer knew how to sleep. Smoke still rose from some quarters, carrying with it the smell of charred wood and flesh. The people moved through the streets like ghosts, fetching water, hauling rubble, searching for the missing. Above it all, the ruined Dragonpit crouched on the hill like a broken crown. Within its crumbling walls, a council had been called. Tyrion Lannister stood in chains on the scarred earth where dragons had once been displayed as trophies. His beard was wild, his eyes sunken from sleepless nights in a dark cell. Iron links clinked softly whenever he shifted his weight. Around him, arranged in a rough semicircle, stood and sat the remnants of Westeros's power. Sansa Stark in a gray gown trimmed with white fur, her face carved from ice. Yara Greyjoy, broad-shouldered and sharp-eyed, a kraken pin at her breast. Gendry, wearing a stag and a hammer, his jaw clenched. Davos Seaworth in plain wool, hands folded, eyes weary but alert. At the center of them all sat Bran Stark. His chair had been carried up the steep path by men who still did not quite know what to make of him. He looked smaller here than he did in the great hall of Winterfell, dwarfed by the broken stone arches and the magnitude of what was being asked of him. Encircling them were ranks of unsullied, spears upright, faces impassive. At their head stood Grey Worm, jaw set, eyes as cold as a drawn blade. We should be killing Lannister, Grey Worm said flatly. Not talking. We will talk first, Davos said. We've had enough killing for several lifetimes. Grey Worm's gaze flicked to him. It is not for you to decide justice for our queen. Our queen is gone, Sansa said evenly. She left your city and took her dragon with her. In her absence, someone has to decide what happens next. Someone, Yara snorted. You mean you? I mean all of us, Sansa replied. Or would you rather leave it to whichever warlord has the longest spear? Speaking of spears, Tyrion interjected mildly, I would prefer they be pointed at each other rather than at me if it's all the same. No one laughed. He sighed. Very well. We are here to decide who will sit in the place Daenerys Targaryen burned, he said. And what to do about the rather large dragon roosting on Dragonstone with the man half the realm wanted to crown. Gendry's mouth flattened. Jon didn't ask for that crown. He rarely asks for anything, Tyrion said, which is precisely why people want to give it to him. It's a tiresome paradox. We can't choose Jon, Yara said sharply. He ran with her. I watched that dragon carry them off together. Whatever he intended when he walked into that throne room, he chose her in the end. Maybe he had a knife at his throat, Davos said. You don't know what happened up there. We know the city burned, Yara retorted. We know he left with her instead of staying to stop her. That's enough. Grey Worm stepped forward. Jon Snow murdered our queen's enemies. He fought for her. Then he abandoned the armies he led and fled with her to hide on Dragonstone like cowards. He will answer for that if we find him. Not if, Sansa said. When. Jon Snow is no good at hiding. The realm will know where he is soon enough. Tyrion looked up at her, something like gratitude flickering briefly across his face. She did not meet his eyes. In any case, he said, we need someone here, now. A ruler the survivors can look to before the city tears itself apart. Let the people choose, one minor lord muttered. We've had enough of kings. And how would they choose? Yara asked. By shouting? By stabbing each other until only one voice is left? Kings are messy, but they're simpler than mobs. All eyes turned eventually to Bran. What do you see? Sansa asked her brother. You have been very quiet. I am always quiet, Bran said. People rarely notice until they need something from me. Tyrion's lips twitched despite himself. And do we have your attention now, Lord Stark? Or whatever title we should be using? Bran considered. The wind tugged at his dark hair, and for a moment his gaze drifted somewhere far beyond the walls. I have seen more kings than this world remembers, he said. Some who ruled for a day, some for years. They all thought they would be the one to break the pattern. None of them were. And you? Yara asked. What about you? I never wanted to be lord of anything, Bran said. I wanted to climb walls and dream of dragons. That did not end well. You have no interest in power, Tyrion said slowly. You cannot father children. You know more about this realm's past than any maester. And you see, other things. You want me to be king, Bran said. I'm suggesting you might make a better one than most, Tyrion replied. Not because you desire the crown, but because you see it for what it is, a burden, not a prize. Sansa's hands clenched in her skirts. You would put my brother in the place she burned? She asked. After everything? Perhaps because of everything, Tyrion said. If we pretend none of this happened, we will repeat it. If we choose a man who has walked through fire, metaphorically speaking, and seen what it does, he might hesitate when others would not. Grey Worm's jaw worked. What of justice? He demanded. What of the blood that cries out from the stones? Our queen died without a throne. Her enemies live. Her killers live. Daenerys Targaryen is not dead, Bran said suddenly. The pit went silent. She lives, he went on Dragonstone, with Jon Snow. They will not stay hidden. The world will drag them back into its games, whether they want it or not. You see this? Davos asked quietly. I see paths, Bran said. This is the one most likely. Grey Worm's eyes narrowed. Then we march, he said. We sail to Dragonstone, we kill the traitor and the queen who abandoned us, and we hang their heads from the walls as worn. And to others who would burn cities and run away. Do that, Tyrion said, and you will start this all over again. Another war, another pile of corpses, another city reduced to rubble. And in 20 years, another council like this, wondering how it all went wrong. What would you have us do? Grey Worm snarled. Let them live in peace while our dead rot in the streets? No, Tyrion said. I would have us give the realm a center first. Then we decide what to do about the edges. He looked back at Bran. Will you take the crown if we offer it? He asked. Not for glory, but to hold this fragile thing together long enough that our children might die in their beds instead of on battlefields? Bran was quiet for a long time. Wind whispered through broken arches. A raven croaked somewhere above. Why do you think I came all this way? He said at last. The decision was not unanimous. It was, Tyrion suspected, precisely because it was unsatisfying to everyone that it might work. By the time the council broke, Bran Stark had been named king. Not of the Seven Kingdoms, those days were gone, but of a looser, more begrudging realm, with the North already declared independent under Sansa, the Iron Islands demanding their own peculiar freedoms under Yara, Dorne promising support in exchange for autonomy. The Riverlands, the Vale, the Reach, the Westerlands, and the Stormlands clung together out of necessity rather than loyalty. Tyrion had been named Hand again. This time, the chain felt less like a badge and more like a shackle he had willingly clasped around his own neck. Later, in a narrow solar overlooking the battered sprawl of the city, he stood by an open window, the evening air cool against his face. The smoke rising from the lower districts was thinner than it had been, but still persistent. The city would smell of char for years. Bran sat by the window, chair angled so he could look out. He did not fidget. Tyrion envied him that. "You did not mention to them that Daenerys is alive," Tyrion said. "Not clearly, not in terms they understood." "I told them she lives," Bran said. "They heard what they were ready to hear." "And what they were ready to hear was that she is gone," Tyrion murmured. "A problem for later, a ghost that will haunt them but not yet knock on their doors." Bran's gaze followed a column of men hauling broken beams away from a collapsed house. "The realm can only survive so many truths at once," he said. "If I laid all of them before that council, they would have torn each other apart before we left the pit." "You could have told them Jon refused to kill her," Tyrion said. "That he dropped his sword instead of spilling her blood. It would have made them trust him more, or hate him less." "Would it?" Bran asked. "Or would they have seen it as further proof that he cannot be relied upon to do what they think is necessary?" Tyrion's mouth twisted. "You might be right. I dislike how often that seems to be the case with you." Bran did not smile. "Jon's choice was his," he said. "He will carry it, whether others understand it or not." Tyrion leaned against the window frame, feeling the rough stone bite into his shoulder. "Grey Worm is not pleased," he said, "about any of it. A king not chosen by his queen. A realm that will not pledge itself entirely to her memory. A queen who flew away instead of taking the city she bled for." "He will leave," Bran said, "sooner than later. He sees no place for himself in a world that is not at war." "And Daenerys?" Tyrion asked. "What place does she have, in your vision?" Bran's eyes went distant again, the way they did when he slipped into whatever currents only he could feel. "She and Jon will shape one another," he said. "Like stones in a river. They will either smooth each other's edges or shatter entirely." Tyrion snorted softly. "Comforting." "It is truth," Bran said. "Whether it comforts you is another question." Silence settled between them for a moment. "I meant what I said," Tyrion said quietly. "About you as king. You are not what I expected. But that might be exactly what this world needs." Bran looked at him, and for a moment the remote calm in his eyes flickered, revealing a hint of something older and more human. "I know the weight of what you've done," he said. "The choices you made, the city you enabled to burn, the queen you betrayed, the others you served before her. You will spend the rest of your life trying to make up for it." "Yes," Tyrion said softly. "I suspect I will." "Good," Bran said. "We're going to need it." On the third day after the council, Grey Worm stood on the broken docks of the Blackwater and watched ships being loaded. The harbor was a graveyard. Burned hulks listed in the shallows, their masts charred stumps. Others had sunk entirely, leaving only rips in the water where currents surged strangely. The surviving piers were crowded with men hauling crates, rolling barrels, shouting over the creak of timbers and the slap of waves. The Unsullied moved among them with the same precise efficiency they brought to the battlefield. They carried spears and shields with their gear, heads high, faces expressionless. This was not the exodus to Noth he had once planned in another life. That path had burned with the queen on the steps of the Red Keep, only she had not been there to die as he had imagined. Instead, she had flown away. Grey Worm's jaw clenched. He had knelt in the ash and the blood, expecting to bleed out his fury on the blade of the man who had stabbed her. Instead, he had been given a king who spoke of balance and mercy, and a realm that wanted to pretend it had not followed his queen to the city's walls. He had waited for word, for a sign, for any indication that Daenerys Targaryen still claimed the city she had taken in fire. None had come. In the absence of orders, he had made his own. "We sail east," he said to the captain of the flagship, a hard-eyed woman whose ship bore no colors. "Along the coast. Dragonstone first." The captain lifted an eyebrow. "Dragonstone?" she echoed. I thought your lot were done with dragons. Grey Worm's gaze hardened. Daenerys Stormborn is not done with us. Until she looks me in the eye and tells me to stand down, I fight. The captain studied him for a moment, then shrugged. As long as your coin spends the same either way, she said. Where I point the prow is your business. He watched a cart of spears being hauled aboard, then turned to the officer at his side. Leave 3 cohorts with the new king, he said. He will need guards while he plays at councils. The rest come with me. I will not let our queen's enemies regroup while she hides on an island. What of the king's orders? The officer asked. He said nothing of war. Then he has said nothing to forbid it, Grey Worm replied curtly. We are not his men. We were hers. The officer's face remained impassive, but his nod was sharp. As Grey Worm turned back to the water, his gaze drifted briefly toward the distant outline of Dragonstone, barely visible on the horizon when the haze shifted. Somewhere out there, a dragon lay coiled on black stone. Somewhere out there, a woman who had freed him from slavery had chosen to fly away when he was ready to die for her. He would go to her. He would see with his own eyes what she had become without the weight of a city beneath her. And if he found her changed, as some whispered, he would decide then whether he could follow this new queen or whether the time had finally come to lay down his spear forever. Storm's End lived up to its name that night. Wind screamed around the thick walls, and rain hammered the arrow slits so hard it sounded like thrown stones. In the great hall, torches guttered in their sconces and banners snapped restlessly above the high table. Gendry Baratheon stood by a heavy oak table, a scroll unrolled in his hands. The seal, a simple 3-headed dragon impression, cracked by the knife that had cut the wax, lay in 2 halves near his elbow. He read the words again, lips moving silently. To those with no lord to protect them, to those driven from their homes by war, by hunger, by the cruelty of kings. At his shoulder, Davos Seaworth shifted his weight. Well? Davos asked. Well, what? Gendry said. What do you make of it? Davos nodded at the parchment. A dragon queen offering sanctuary instead of fire. A man you once rode with signing his name beneath hers. Gendry's jaw tightened. Jon's always been mad that way. Trying to save people who don't want saving. Expecting lords to act like men and men to act like lords. He saved you, Davos said mildly, and a great many others. Gendry exhaled through his nose, looking back at the scroll. Dragonstone stands open as refuge. No city will burn by our hand. No child will die by our design. We will fight those who come to kill us, but we will not be the first to bring fire. Signed, Jon of House Stark and House Targaryen. Sworn shield to Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen. Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, breaker of chains, mother of dragons, sworn protector of the weak, and penitent destroyer of King's Landing. That last bit, Gendry said slowly. Penitent destroyer. That's not the sort of thing you write if you're just pretending to be sorry. No, Davos said. It isn't. Gendry rolled the scroll up with careful fingers. The lords won't like it, he said. A dragon queen setting herself up as protector of cast-offs. They'll say she's gathering an army. She is, Davos said. An army of people no one else wanted. Funny thing about those sorts, they can be fiercely loyal if you give them reason. Gendry moved to the window. Through the slit, he could see little beyond the lashing rain and the turmoil of the sea, waves breaking white against jagged rocks. Somewhere out there, a black silhouette of an island brooded under the same storm. I owe Jon, he said quietly, for pulling me out of a frozen lake, for telling me what I was when no one else would, for treating me like more than some bastard with a hammer. Davos said, and I owe him a few things myself. Bran's the king now, Gendry said. The words still felt strange in his mouth when applied to the quiet boy from Winterfell. If we answer this, if we go to him before we speak to the king, you're not talking about sailing your whole garrison over to kneel in her hall, Davos said. You're talking about sending a man, 2 perhaps, to see with their own eyes what's happening on Dragonstone. Then we tell Bran what we find. Gendry's fingers tapped against the scroll. And if we find that she's building a fortress of fear? He asked. Then we say so, Davos replied. We tell the king that Dragonfire will come again if it isn't stopped. But if we find something else, then Bran will have a choice to make, Gendry finished. And so will the rest of us. He turned back from the window, brow furrowed. Will you go? He asked. To Dragonstone? Davos's mouth twisted. Old man like me? He said. They might just fling me off the battlements and call it a mercy. You're the best one we have, Gendry said. You know, Jon, you've dealt with her before. You stood on that island when it was empty first time. You'll know if something's changed. Davos looked at the scroll, at the broken seal, then at the storm howling outside. I'll go, he said. I've seen enough mad kings and queens to last me several lifetimes. If there's even a chance this one's learned something from her own madness, I'd like to see it with my own eyes before someone else throws a match on the tinder. The sea was not kind to Davos Seaworth on the journey to Dragonstone. It rarely was, even in his smuggling days, but age had made his stomach less forgiving. By the time the small, sturdy vessel Gendry had lent him nosed into the inlet beneath Dragonstone's black cliffs, his legs felt as though someone had taken a mallet to them. He climbed out onto the slick stone of the landing and inhaled deeply. The air smelled of wet rock and smoke, with a hint of something older beneath. The sulfur tang he remembered from the Dragon Queen's first arrival. Above, Drogon's dark shape was visible on a cliff ledge, massive wings tucked in, head lifted to watch the newcomers with unblinking eyes. On the landing, waiting, stood Jon Snow. He looked older, Davos thought. Not in years, those had not changed so quickly, but in the way war and grief carved themselves into the set of his shoulders, the hollows beneath his eyes. His hair was wind-tangled. A few days' worth of beard shadowed his jaw. He wore no crown. The sword at his side was plainer than the one Davos had last seen on his hip. You look like death warmed over, Davos said by way of greeting. So do you, Jon replied, and for a moment the knot in Davos's chest loosened at the faint, crooked curve of his mouth. Behind him, Daenerys Targaryen stood with her hands clasped before her. She too looked changed. The fierce, burnished aura she'd carried in King's Landing had dimmed. Not entirely gone, but banked like coals under ash. Her dress was simple, her hair wind-tossed. There were lines at the corners of her mouth that had not been there before. Lady Daenerys, Davos said, inclining his head. Or is it your grace still? My lady will do, she said. I have burned one city. I will not ask another to kneel. Davos huffed softly. That's a start, at least. He glanced around as he followed them up the path. The courtyard bore the marks of new activity. Nets hanging to dry, barrels stacked, children's chalk scribbles on a patch of stone near the well. Refugees moved about their tasks with the wary purpose of people who had not yet decided whether they had found a home or a temporary shelter between disasters. What do you make of it? Jon asked as they walked. I see not nearly enough food for the number of mouths, Davos said. I see a dragon that's going to eat you out of house and castle before long. I see people who look at her. He jerked his chin toward Daenerys. Like she's either a miracle or a nightmare, and they haven't decided which yet. That's about right, Jon said. And I see you, Davos went on, caught in the middle as usual. They reached the hall. Inside, the air was warmer, thick with the smell of stew and damp cloaks. Davos noted the placement of benches, the lack of guards bristling by the doors, the way the refugees glanced up when their new rulers entered and then, mostly, went back to their tasks. Gendry sent me, Davos said once they were seated around the same table where Jon had written the letters. And the king, Bran Stark, if you haven't heard. There was a council. Things were said. Titles handed out like stale bread. He's sitting what's left of the throne now, or near enough. We heard, Jon said. Ravens are slower than rumor, but they still fly. Davos studied Daenerys. You don't seem in a hurry to reclaim what you burned, he said. Reclaim? she said quietly. I never claimed to begin with. There is a difference. He nodded slowly. So what are you doing here? Trying to build something that is not made entirely of bones, she said. A refuge of sorts. A place for those the lords would rather forget. A shield for the weak, if we can manage it. And when the lords decide they don't like that? Davos asked. Because they won't. No one with a holdfast likes to hear about someone offering shelter they can't control. Then we'll deal with them, Jon said. On the sea if we must. On the fields. But not in their cities. We won't burn them to make a point. Davos's gaze flicked between them. You mean that, he said. Both of you? Yes, Daenerys said. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. I've seen what happens when a man refuses to bend his principles, he said. Sometimes he ends up dead in the snow. Sometimes he drags a whole kingdom into war after him. And sometimes, he tilted his head. Sometimes he makes something new. What does Bran intend to do? Jon asked. About us. Davos's mouth twisted. He intends to watch, he said. By which I mean he'll probably see more than any of us. He's not ready to march on you, if that's what you're asking. He's got a burned city to patch together and half a realm to keep from flying apart. But Grey Worm's another story. Grey Worm, Daenerys said sharply. He's taken ships, Davos said. A fair number of your Unsullied with him, talking about finishing what the Queen began, settling accounts. He'll head this way first, if I had to wager. Daenerys went very still. Jon's jaw clenched. He thinks I abandoned him, she said. Abandoned them all. Well, you did fly off without so much as a farewell speech, Davos said. They were ready to die for you. Hard thing to turn off. He was ready to kill everyone in that city for me, she said. That's the other side of it. Then you'd best decide what you'll do when his ships appear on your horizon, Davos said. Because they will. And soon. That night, the torches along Dragonstone's outer walls burned brighter than usual, their flames a defiant line against the encroaching dark. The wind had swung around again, bringing with it the faint tang of smoke from the distant mainland and the sharper scent of approaching rain. Jon and Daenerys stood on a narrow balcony that jutted from one of the towers. The sea spread out beneath them like a vast, restless animal. The waves glimmered faintly in the starlight, breaking white against the rocks. Below, in the courtyard, Davos was speaking quietly with Mara and a few of the more capable refugees, arranging watches, discussing how quickly the boats could be turned into makeshift fire ships if the worst came. Drogon's silhouette was visible on his favorite ledge, tail curled protectively around his body, head lifted as if he, too, were sniffing for changes in the wind. Grey Worm will come, Daenerys said. He should. If our roles were reversed, I would have. Jon nodded. He thinks he's avenging you, he said. He doesn't know you're the one who needs stopping now, if anyone does. Her lips quirked humorlessly. You put that very plainly. I was never good with pretty words, he said. Just the true ones. They leaned on the stones side by side, shoulders almost touching. I chose him, she said. I broke his chains and gave him a new purpose. To fight for me, to die for me if needed. I told him that obedience was his strength, that I would lead him toward justice. And then I burned a city and left him standing in the ruins. She closed her eyes briefly. If he comes here believing I am still that woman, she went on, how do I ask him to believe otherwise? A few boats of refugees and some bowls of stew are not enough to erase what I did. No, Jon agreed. They're not, but they're a start. She opened her eyes and turned to look at him. And when he arrives with spears and righteous anger, she asked, will you stand between us? Between dragons and the men who once followed them? If I have to, he said, but I'd rather you did. He needs to hear it from you. Her fingers drummed absently against the stone. When I first crossed the narrow sea, she said, I thought the world was simple, masters and slaves, usurpers and rightful queens, fire and chains. I burned those who stood in my way and told myself I was cleansing the world. Then I stood over a city I had turned to ash and realized there was no cleansing in it. Only more filth, spread wider. She looked back out over the sea. I don't know how to be the person they need, she said. Not yet. I only know how to be the one I have been. And she is not someone I want to meet again. You won't, Jon said. Not if you remember what it felt like, standing in that city after the fires died. He thought of her in the throne room, ash in her hair, eyes bright and brittle. He thought of Longclaw falling from his hand. You asked me once if love was the death of duty, he said. Maester Aemon told me that sometimes duty is the death of love. I think he was wrong or only half right. Sometimes love is what keeps duty from turning into madness. She regarded him curiously. And what is our duty now, Jon Snow? Not to the throne, he said. Not to prophecies or old men's wars. To them. He nodded toward the hall below, where the refugees slept. To the ones no one else is thinking about. And, whether we like it or not, to each other. To make sure neither of us forgets why we're doing this. And when Grey Worm comes? She pressed. Then our duty is to stop him from turning this island into another graveyard, Jon said. Without turning him into one if we can help it. He's as much a victim of what you became as anyone in that city. She made a small, bitter sound. You ask for impossible things. I've seen you do impossible things, he said. Walk out of fire, fly into storms, break wheels. This seems small beside that. For a long moment, the only sound was the sea and the distant murmur of voices from the courtyard. At last, Daenerys straightened, shoulders squaring. Very well, she said. When he comes, I will meet him at the shore. I will stand before the men who would die for me and tell them that the woman they knew is gone. That if they fight now, it will not be for justice but for revenge. And if they won't listen? Jon asked. Then, she said, we will do what we must to keep this place safe, but we will not be the first to burn. He watched her profile, the torchlight painting her features in warm gold and deep shadow. For the first time since they had fled King's Landing, he saw not a queen aflame with righteousness, nor a broken woman haunted by the screams of a city, but someone standing on a knife's edge, refusing to step in either direction. He reached out, hesitated, then laid his hand over hers on the stone. Her fingers stiffened, then relaxed beneath his touch. Together, he said again. Together, she echoed, her voice low but steady. Far out on the dark horizon, unseen except perhaps by a king in a distant city with clouded eyes, a cluster of small shapes moved against the waves, sails catching the wind, heading unerringly toward the black silhouette of Dragonstone.